Lovely, thank you. And just to start with that, I'm fairly certain you can type things. Just makes things handy for me and more tailored to you. If you do want to type in what it is that you do somewhere, if there's a facility to do that, please do that. Because obviously you haven't got a massive group here, so if I could tailor it more to what it is that you do day to day, that might be more useful for you. But yeah, as we just said there, we're going to be talking about insurance, and mainly insurance for freelancers and contractors, so people like yourselves that work for themselves in essence, and how that it's a bit more complicated basically than like your home insurance and bits like that. So it's really difficult in the world that we live in to type online, get information about insurance. What do I need? What should I get? It's not what people want to be thinking about. So it's not much people don't know about it basically. So we're going to go into that in a bit of detail, and also about trying to get you to understand what cover you realistically need. You can maybe go online and do a quote, and they offer you different packages, different types of insurance. What is it that you actually need based on what you do? Why is it me that you're speaking to? We'll go through to start with. If I can figure out how to change the slide. There we go. I'm currently product trading manager for Kingsbridge. Recently moved from an underwriting role, so I've been looking at for the last few years as an underwriter, businesses like yourselves asking for insurance, but usually the more complicated ones, the ones that got loads of bankruptcies and problems and claims in the past. But when you are newer to insurance, which most freelancers are, you won't have any of that, so insurance will be much easier for you to get. I currently specialize in trying to make products better for people like yourselves, so tailor insurance products to meet the demands of people like you, so the insurance actually makes more sense to you, it actually has valuable to you. To start with, we're just going to go through really what is the importance of insurance for someone like yourself. So I mentioned earlier, as an employee, there are certain protections that you naturally get. You're not really worried about if you are a little bit negligent with your work potentially. If something goes wrong, if you have a bit of an error, it's not necessarily your responsibility. Yes, you may get in trouble with your boss. Yes, there's potential to get fired, but financially, you're not at any form of risk. But as a freelancer, you definitely are. If you do hurt a member of the public with what you do, if you do damage somebody's equipment, if you do give a piece of advice or do a piece of work that doesn't work for someone's project and ends up delaying their project, you actually are financially liable for that. There is nobody else liable for that but yourself, which means you do need to put some protections in for yourself. Otherwise, you could be in a position where you can't trade anymore because someone wants to take money off you that you don't have. In essence, insurance is what we call, in the insurance term, like a risk transfer mechanism. You're putting some money rather than into a pot, saving up. If something goes wrong, it means every single month you have that put aside that transfers to a potential risk in the future. Moving on from that, as we discussed there, it protects you against third-party liability. So one of the biggest things for insurance is if you hurt a member of the public or if you damage their product, as well as obviously your negligence or your, I hate that word, none of you are negligent in your work, I'm very sure, it's a very insurance-y word. We're referring to basically errors, acts or omissions, so just mistakes that could lead to delays in projects, delays in work people are doing, or mistakes in designs that mean this needs to be redone, the timelines for a project go out of sync because of something you've done. That again is your responsibility, so you need to make sure you're covered for that. Safeguard your income, as we've already went over, because you're in a situation where you don't have to put money aside every single month just in case something goes wrong. You're covered anyway. Enhance your credibility and trust. I mean that in a form of your clients currently, if you don't have any insurance, if something goes wrong, they can't guarantee you can afford to rectify what's gone wrong, which puts them in a position where they often are thinking, do I want this person to leave me in the lurch if they don't have insurance? If you have insurance, they know that if something does go wrong, which you shouldn't do because you're all professionals, they actually have some backing. You have the financial backing behind you to make sure that you'll rectify it for them without anything going wrong. And then there's compliance with legal and contract requirements. So insurance in many cases is a legal requirement. If you have any form of employee, even if it's your a partner perhaps that does admin for you, or a family member that does admin for you, they're still an employee of yours and you're responsible for them, so you legally have to have employer's liability. The other bit there is contractual requirements. So depending on who you work with, I don't know if most of you are purely freelance, so working on one-off projects, working for a few weeks. I'm sure some of you as well have been in situations where you work on projects with perhaps a bigger business, perhaps a media company, where you're working on a contract rather than just a freelance job. In those situations, they will often say to you, we're not going to have you work for us unless you have these minimum insurance requirements. So they're protecting themselves. And then we're going to move on to actually making sure you have adequate business insurance. So making insurance adequate, basically a comprehensive cover. It's basically you making sure that you've covered all the bases of the risk for your business. And every single person here, I'm sure the risk that you face will be completely different. So you need to make sure that yours is tailored to you. That then enforce, obviously, that financial protection. It then enforce means you are going to meet those legal and contractual requirements no matter what it is you're doing. Therefore, you have the peace of mind to do that day to day. Tailoring to your specific needs, again, you yourselves need to have an understanding of what you need in order to do that, which is partly why we're having that conversation today. And you need to make sure you pick an insurer that has an efficient claim process. An insurer is only good as its claims team. There's no point having insurance if there's not a team behind it at claim stages who are going to actually help you. Again, I work for Kingsbridge. We have a dedicated in-house claims team. We're in a situation where, thankfully, we have 2-3 individuals that I see every single day fight towards making sure people get their money in these situations. Not every insurer will have that, so you need to be careful on all those lines as well. So risks that you may face. Feel free to pop anything in that you think maybe is a risk for yourselves as well. But from the type of audience I can see that you normally tend to have expensive equipment. I know many of you may have expensive laptops. You may be editors, designers, in these type of worlds. If that is to break, you're in a situation potentially where you can't work, you can't earn your money. You can get business equipment insurance to make sure that if that does happen, we can replace it or fix it for you. Liability coverage, that's what we've already discussed. That's if you hurt a member of the public or damage them with what you do. Contractual requirements, without that, you can't get your project in some cases. So if you don't meet them, you're actually limited to what work you can have. Professional errors, once again, is completely dependent on what you do. If you're a cameraman, you may film something in the wrong direction, do something wrong. They may not get to use that footage until 6 months' time, realize it's wrong, you've delayed their project, you're liable now to try and fix that. You may not be in a situation where you have the money to do that. Moving on to something like a designer, if you're perhaps a graphic designer, you may not do it to specification, then delays a project by several weeks, cost the company money, they want you to pay them that money, reimburse them that money. A software developer may do some code wrong, which makes the system not work. Again, that may mean the system's down for an amount of time, therefore they've lost money, they're going to want to ask you to get it back. And there's honestly so many situations you could be in for your professional negligence and third-party damage. For yourselves, I'm thinking more professional errors, bearing in mind the type of roles I've seen put in there earlier today. And then there's the health and insurance and security. So if you're unable to work because you're hurt while doing your job, again, you're in a situation where you're not an employee, you're not going to get sick pay. You need to make sure that you actually still can keep paying the mortgage, keep paying the bills day to day. So insurance can offer you personal accident cover as well, which can cover you basically weekly or monthly until you are better. So you don't have to stop working. Lovely. And now I'm going to go into what most people would probably think is the more boring bit, the nitty-gritty of the two main insurances. But I just want everyone to understand what they actually mean. So when you are looking for insurance, you know, which one do I need and at what level of cover do I actually need it? So the two there really are professional indemnity and public liability. I'm sure we've all heard of it, but not necessarily knowing the ins and outs of what it is and what it does. So first of all, going into professional indemnity, as I feel it's the most relevant to your types of roles as creative people, as people in that world. This covers you for what we discussed earlier, is in your professional negligence. Hate that word. I should have changed that. Your acts and omissions errors that you may do. Loss of data or documents, defamation. So you perhaps accidentally put something in a piece of material you've made that you shouldn't have done. This would include things, again, as I mentioned earlier, designs, faulty design, anything where you've either given advice or done a design or done a piece of work, which could potentially then lead to financial loss for the person you've done it for. We're covering in those situations. So again, it's really, really vast and depends on what you do. I think I saw somewhere, if I have a look at what people put that they do, see graphic design and web content creator. Graphic design is one that we get claimed upon reasonably often, and that's because quite often the designs used actually aren't used until a certain period after you've made them. I don't know exactly how you work, but you may find you work on a project for a week, you hand over graphic design, and may not be used in their project until 6 months' time. At that point in time, it may be unsuitable, they don't need it, or you may have not followed the specification, it's not how they needed it to be. They could say that's your fault, we gave you a spec, that's not what we needed. You've now delayed. We now have to pay for somebody else to do it. That's now delayed our project. We actually cover you in those situations. A few others put in here. We've got market research and brand consultancy. Again, you're very much going to be a PI heavy risk. So you're giving companies, I'm guessing, advice around market research and consulting. Any negligent advice, or what's seen as negligent advice, or an error in your advice that leads to a financial loss to your client, or perhaps this brand was supposed to give us this many viewers, this one actually has given us none, and you're in a situation where technically you promised that your service would better them. If it hasn't given them betterment, if it's actually caused financial loss because of that, you're in a situation where we could help you out, basically, rather than having to pay out your own pocket. Perfect. The second one is public liability. This, for everything you've just told me there, I feel like you don't need it as much, but every single role has some kind of element of need. If you do hurt a member of the public or damage their property, you're liable for it. And that includes fees going to court, all of it, you're completely liable for it. If you are at a desk most of the time, maybe working from home, part of your job, yeah, that's a very big one, Emma, actually. Filming events, if you're physically at an event, you very easily could trip somebody up. I'm sure when you're operating a camera, you're not always looking left and right at what's going on around you as well. If you hurt somebody or damage somebody's property, you're liable for that, and that could potentially be very expensive. Just having a quick read of that last question. I won't be a second. Yeah. So PL cover covers you in the course of your business activities. So whether that is you at your desk, I'm not sure how you would as much hurt somebody at your desk or damage their property. But again, it's more made for people that are out and about with their work, because obviously you're more likely to hurt somebody. Yeah, and exactly right. And it's only in your business capacity. So yeah, if you hurt somebody day to day, and normally there's actually insured under your home insurance, if you do have any. But we can come on to that another time if anyone's got any questions on that. Lovely. Business equipment cover. I've given here a couple of examples of when that may potentially claim. My screen's gone black. Can everyone still see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Sorry, mine's gone completely blank. Thank you for that. The biggest ones that we get claims-wise here at Kingsbridge, for people like yourselves, your graphic designers, your camera people, your more creative professionals, the majority of it is business equipment. There's no doubt that you have cameras that are very expensive. There's no doubt that your laptops that are good enough to edit on and have all these fancy CPUs and GPUs I don't know about are more expensive than your normal computers. If you accidentally damage them or they get stolen, we can be in a position where we can also help you in those situations by replacing them or fixing them. There are 3 examples here of claims in the last month for those exact reasons. They get accident damage to a laptop, somebody dropped their laptop, became just unresponsive, wouldn't work anymore. We replaced it. It cost us £500, but we're happy to replace it because we're paying for the insurance for that situation. And it does also include any accidental damage and theft, as you can see on there as well. The two most common things we see, as you can imagine, are cameras and laptops. But if anyone's got anything more interesting equipment they may use, I'll be interested to see what else they need covering. But 99% of the time, you get a laptop or a camera. Perfect. I think it's probably the reason why most people are more interested in listening to about this is almost what cover do I actually need for what I do, and based on the contracts and the work that I do, what numbers am I looking at when I'm typing in a form in order what is relevant to me. And hopefully I've put it on here, and I have. Lovely. It depends completely on what you do. So there are 2 aspects that we've already discussed there, your professional indemnity and your public liability. I think we can probably gather that for most of you, the highest amount of risk you're going to face is for professional indemnity, but how much do we actually need? I would never, ever recommend anyone to get lower than £1 million of PI, simply because things escalate. And also you have court fees and all the fees involved as well, almost always rack up to much more than you think it is. You may think they're claiming a fee for £100,000 or something. By the time you add on the legal fees for both you and them, it can get quite ridiculous. But £1 million sounds like a lot of money, doesn't it? It's an amount of money that I've never seen in my life. Yes, Alistair, we'll come on to that in a second. But what about 2, 3, 4, 5 million, which are the other amounts that generally you can have. And normally it is because, as Alistair said there, the minimum requirements from your client would be in a situation where they're saying, we're not going to insure you unless you have this. But if you don't have those minimum requirements, how do I then decide what it is I need? And the answer really is the size of the contract you're working on, and you personally, how big of an impact is what you're doing potentially going to have on their project. So if you are a videographer, and potentially you could be working on all sorts, but the piece of overall work that they're working on, your fee income may be quite small compared to the amount of impact for the actual overall client. That amount that you're earning is almost irrelevant. The impact you could have by doing it wrong to the overall project is far greater than what they're paying you. So we need to go by overall, basically project size. So you may be getting paid £10,000 to do some videography on a project which is valued at £2 million start and finish. If you delay that project through your work by a couple of months, in all likelihood, it's going to be more than £10,000 worth of damage to try and rectify that. So if you can figure out or know the value of what the work you're doing is contributing to the overall project that you're working towards, that's a good idea of trying to cap what your insurance is at a number which would encompass that, just to make sure you're fully protected. It is a personal thing, and there's no contractual requirement. It is completely your choice for PI and PR how much that you do have. But in order to cover yourself, just make sure that you have at least got the contract sizes that you're working on covered up to. And then when it comes to public liability, it really depends on the style of work that you do. We've already thankfully touched on this. If you are somebody sat at a desk all day, every day, as part of your job as a graphic designer or as a software developer, your risk of hurting the public is quite slim. So realistically, the standard 1 million, £2 million worth of cover is suitable for you. However, if you are in a situation where you are filming events with expensive equipment, or you're working near expensive equipment or on expensive equipment that isn't owned by you, you're in a situation where you could do a lot more damage, and having higher amounts would benefit you. Standard package that I recommend to everybody is 1 million PI and 5 million PL. But if you are a desk-based job, the minimum again is 1 million. I think that's actually just been asked. If your job is purely desk-based and you honestly think there's almost zero chance I'm going to hurt the public with what I do, 1 million is the lowest you should ever go, and you'll struggle to find insurance less than 1 million, because most insurers agree that less than that, there's no point you having it. But if you are in any situation where you may hurt the public, if it's only in small occasions, I'd always recommend 2 million is almost always suitable for you, unless you're working with equipment that's really expensive. But to cover all bases, if you are somebody who's quite risk averse, 5 million PL is almost industry standard across all industries. That's not just for people like yourselves, that's also for like engineers, architects, those people in that design work. 5 million tends to be the standard that's recommended by most brokers and insurers. It basically covers all bases for yourself. It means that in 90% of occasions, no matter what happens, you're not going to be in any financial detriment yourself if any of these incidents do occur. I come on to now as well a bit about pricing of insurance, but before I do, I'm going to have a little quick look about what people have put in the chat, see if anything I can answer there. Yeah, desk worker, Annabelle, I definitely say if it's purely desk, just no less than £1 million public liability. You still, through the course of your work, could hurt somebody. I mentioned earlier, your home insurance would normally cover you for your days if you're out having fun and you hurt somebody. Your house insurance normally has cover for that type of thing. But even as somebody who is purely at your desk, you may be carrying your laptop somewhere, you may go out and about for work reasons, for a meeting, to meet somebody. In those situations, your home insurance would be irrelevant. You'd need to have business insurance that covers you for that. Lovely. Client mentioning, Alistair, how much insurance you want. That's what we mainly see these days, is clients recommended amounts that you need. I won't lie to you, sometimes they recommend amounts that are far more than you would ever need, depending on who it is. Like a lot of people have contracts like the NHS. They always require 10 million public liability, which for people like yourself is very, very unlikely to need that level of cover ever. But if you do have minimum requirements, it's just almost important that if you have them regularly, you have an insurance set up which already meets those requirements, or at least an insurer that can be adaptable to change last minute. Ideally, you want insurance that you set up on a day once a year and you leave it for the year. You don't want to be in a situation where as a freelancer, I have several contracts throughout the year, changing month on month. This month I need to change my insurance because the cover level requirements are this. This month I need to change it because I've now got this going on. That's complicating everyone's lives, and the reality actually isn't financially viable either. You end up having to pay for like fees for making changes and bits like that. If you can find yourself an insurance that recovers most of your contract at the start of the year, that's the best situation you can be in. You may not know. If you don't know, getting a standard package is absolutely fine, and coming to the insurer and saying, I may need to change my insurance part of 3 years, fine. But if you've been working for years and you know almost all my contracts, they recommend I have at least 2 million PI or at least 1 million PI and 5 million PL. If you can get that locked in place, it saves you time and saves you money throughout the year. Perfect. So here are just some examples of how much insurance can cost. These are Kingsbridge numbers. So the company that I work for and Unijuno are partnershiped with. It's worth noting that on top of this, because of the partnership, there's a 20% discount on all of this just for Unijuno members. And you don't need to do anything to get that either. If you go on the website, which is Kingsbridge, you type in Kingsbridge Insurance, you come up straight away. You can do it, even do it online or speak to somebody. By just saying you work with Unijuno, who referred to Unijuno, instantly you get 20% off. So that comes through instantly. But here are some examples of the cover level. So at the moment, you'll see they're all 1 million PI. And that's because 99% of the time, your clients will require 1 million PI. That's the normal amount they will need. But here's some different levels of other covers. You can see there for one-on-one, with EL, which is bolted on a standard just in case you need a substitute in any situation where you can't insure, you do have an admin member of staff, like the partner doesn't work for you, you're legally covered basically. You're not worried about the legal side of things. Is 229.50 plus tax. That was 20% off isn't a lot of money for £1 million worth of cover for negligence and also third-party property damage in those situations. But moving slightly down the list as well, for the ones where you can see excluding the PA and D&O. So PA, I'm referring to personal accident, and D&O, I'm referring to directors and officers. I don't expect any of you to know what directors and officers is. Basically, if you are a director of a business, which I'm sure you all are as freelancers, or an officer, or you're a limited company with just you, or even a sole trader, you have certain responsibilities that as an employee of a company, again, you wouldn't have, or one of your employees wouldn't have. And that is things sometimes to do with health and safety regulations and bits like that you can get in trouble for. It covers you for those bits as well, that you wouldn't not necessarily directly to do with your work, but directly to do with your responsibilities as a business owner. Having a comprehensive policy that covers across all of it is what we'd always recommend. It just simply means if you go down to the third line there, you want 1, 2, 10 and 250 per week. You have £1 million worth of cover for any errors, acts or omissions, any mistakes you make in your work. £2 million worth of cover for the public if you damage their property or hurt them. £10 million is a standard number, always used for employees' liability. Up to £250 a week if you're hurt at work and no longer can work, so you can keep going. There's a £50,000 death benefit if you die while you're at work. Again, that supports your family, not you. And you get £100,000 worth of D&O. That's £314 plus tax, minus 20%. It's a lot of cover for your business. I'm now just going to go on to another couple of details on PI insurance, as again, the one that's most relevant to you. And that is what's known as what's called a claims made insurance, which means if things may happen in the past that come and bite you in the future, basically. With the type of work you do, you may be in a situation where the clients don't realize there was a mistake until the future. And you don't want to be in a situation where I've had insurance for 3 months for this work I was doing. I cancel my insurance. A month later, they realized it was wrong. I no longer have my insurance, so I'm not insured. That's not a situation that you want anyone to be in. So there is a thing basically called run-off cover. And it just means that if you do want to cancel your insurance because you've currently got no projects ongoing and you're nothing in the near future to do, you want to make sure you're still covered for the stuff you have done already, if anything occurs. So effectively, you'll pay a smaller amount for either 1, 3 or 6 years, going back in the past, to make sure you're covered for anything that's happened for the work you did during that time, for the same type of work that you do now. Also, because it's claims made, it means that even though the insurance, if you buy it now, is for now, if you are to have work that perhaps occurred 3 years ago and an incident occurs from that for the same type of work, you're insured as long as you have that policy or run-off cover. and that's called retroactive cover. So when you are looking for insurance, always look out for retroactive cover. Kingsbridge just give it a standard for free and limited retroactive. Other insurers will probably make you charge for it, and will make sure that you have continuous cover in order to have it. But it just means that cover for things you've done in the past, you're also insured for, which is really, really important when it comes to PI. Customers, it's so common that customers don't realise that what you've done has caused their loss until further down the line. Perfect. So that's the majority, guys, of what I wanted to go through with you. And I understand that you're probably not in a situation where you have somebody who's an underwriter and insurance professional in front of you to ask any questions. So have you got any questions for me based off what we discussed on insurance in general?
Please feel free to type and also raise your hand if you just like to unmute yourself and ask a question. I know that we usually need 2 minutes or so for everyone to stop being shy and ask questions. So let's give everyone some time.
Yeah, honestly, I'll be on here for a little while anyway. There we go. Yeah, feel free to ask a question.
Ekaterina, would you like to ask your question?
Hello, yes. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you fine, yes.
Excellent. So this might be a bit of a weird one. So right now
Okay.
I've got a sort of side engagement that's part-time that I'm doing as a sole trader, and I do have I think there's public liability and whatever the other one is, professional indemnity.
Yeah.
But I was wondering, just in terms of how the public liability applies, given that the engagement is, I'm an online course instructor, but I'm working for an organization that kind of fronts these courses, delivers them, issues certificates and so on. So it's not my brand, it's not my content and things like that. Now, I'm not doing anything like recommending that people invest all their savings in Bitcoin. So it's not anything kind of high stakes like that. So I'm just wondering kind of what the situation there is with public liability, and how does that apply to me, because I'm not the organization that's specifically kind of engaging with the students.
So that's fine. So the organization actually making the materials, are you? So you're just delivering the materials for them?
I'm delivering, yes.
Yeah. So in that situation, the public liability is, you're an individual, I'm guessing, when you're doing this, you're sat at a desk, you're not going to meet people in person and doing this in person. So public liability for you is definitely a lower risk, but professional indemnity is where your risk would sit. So that would be if you deliver the training in a way which is not how they want. You've perhaps misinterpreted something in their wording, and lots of people now are doing something a certain way which is not how they intended it to be. That would be classed as professional negligence. Again, I hate using that word. You're not negligent, because stuff like this happens. When errors like that happen, that's when PI would come into place. If your client argues you've, by reading something wrong, trained this many people wrong, therefore we have to retrain them, it's going to cost us this much money, you're in a situation where you're not going to be at any financial loss for that. But for public liability, is really if you hurt people or damage someone's property. So for you personally, there's a lot lower risk of you doing that. But for you accidentally misrepresenting the actual data, perhaps giving away information about the company that you shouldn't be by accident, or using logos, using information that you shouldn't be by accident, that's the situation where you're in, where you're covered for when it comes to professional indemnity. Does that make sense?
Yes, I think it does. And then I do have a separate question around if I have insurance and then I have multiple engagements, say one is under a personal services company outside IR35, and then say another one is a sole trader situation. Do they need to be separate insurances with separate entities, or is one insurance going to cover?
It depends on the insurer. It depends on how the entity works. So have you got a sole trader set up and a limited company for yourself, separate?
I've not got the limited company at the moment, but if I'm sort of looking at those outside IR35 engagements, I'm kind of wondering, looking to the future, kind of how that would work.
Yeah. So you can still work through your sole trader business in that situation. I'd always recommend that you try and stick to one, either legal entity, either limited company or sole trader. just simply because it's cheaper for you. You would have to buy 2 different insurances because you are
Right.
2 different legal entities. But like companies like Kingsbridge, actually Kingsbridge specialise in IR35. We have a team of tax experts, bits like that. Even if you are a sole trader, you can still do like a status review to make sure that you are legally in the right space for inside outside IR35, and then can give you a certificate to go into that engagement with. You just need to make sure you've got an insurer that's willing to give you that guidance and help in those situations. IR35 is obviously tax liability. It's not really an insurance thing. So there are only a few insurances like Kingsbridge and Kudos are the main 2 that will give you advice properly on IR35. Not many other insurers will.
Yeah, got it. I think that answers my questions. Thank you.
Oh, perfect. Lovely. Anything else at all?
There is a question from Annabelle on the chat, I believe.
Let's have a look. So we do the insurance ourselves. We're not a broker, so we are also known as an MGA. So we're called a managing general agent, which again you have no reason to know what that means. That basically means we're acting as the insurer. We're not a broker. So we are Kingsbridge. We have Kingsbridge products only. We don't have like a scope of the market like a broker would do. So the insurance would be Kingsbridge. It'd be underwritten by accredited, which is the financial backing, but the insurance is Kingsbridge. So all the documentation will say Kingsbridge. You wouldn't go through Kingsbridge and get a NAB like a Beazley or a Markel policy. You'd always get a Kingsbridge policy. But the underwriter, the financial backing may differ depending on what policy you get. I hope that answers your question. That's nice to hear. Some nice feedback from Alistair. Thank you very much for that. So Emma, on yours, so what I would recommend with that is there's no point you paying more than you need to. So if you see frequently minimum requirements that are at a certain level, yes, go for the top one that you often recommended. There's no point going above that unless you need it. It's not too hard to give an insurer the call or Kingsbridge a call and go, I need to up it on this one occasion. But if it's frequently dipping between like 1 and 2 or 2 and 5 or 1 and 5 million for your insurances, for the contracts that you're having, you're better off just sticking for the top level and keeping it for the year. It also means you're covered for that amount retroactively. So you heard me mention retroactive cover earlier. If you've got one contract recommending you have 1 million PI and the next have 2, and you're switching it all the time from 1 and 2, when you only have 1, you only retroactively cover for that 1. So even that work in the past that needed 2 is now only covered for 1. So just make sure that you stick to the high limit that you see frequently. But if you see perhaps high limit once in a blue moon, once every couple of years, there's probably no need for you to pay extra for that year. Lovely. Have I missed anything else there?
I don't think you have, but maybe there are some more questions. As always, remember there are no silly questions. Usually the ones that you consider silly are the best ones. That's my experience from events. So yeah. Please feel free to ask.
Yes. So when you don't have, if you have the insurance with us, Alistair, so as has just asked, does the insurance cover you for times where you don't actually have the contracts? So if you're in a situation where you're between contracts, the contracts that you've already done still may be an issue and still may claim on you. So as long as you have the insurance, you're covered for that, even if you're not ongoing with the contract. And sometimes as freelancers, you're not necessarily working on a big contract, are you? You're doing a piece of work for somebody on a small scale. In those situations, yes, you're also insured. Alice, does that actually answer your question? Did you mean something different there? Please let me know if you did. And Annabelle, you can either email partners@kingsbridge.co.uk. That will just simply bring you through to the partnership team to try and get you through to a quote. So that means somebody will give you a ring, find out what you need and get you a quote. You can just go on kingsbridge.co.uk's website and get a quote there. As long as you put in who referred you, Juno, you will get the discount anyway. But I'd always recommend with these insurances, as we've just said there, it can be reasonably complicated. to speak to somebody in person. So if you email partners@kingfisher.co.uk, you will get somebody, a human person, give you a ring and discuss it. So providing some income. Yes, your personal accident would do, Alistair. So if you have personal accident in your policy, which you may do, depending on what cover levels you have, it's worth checking. If you are to be hurt while doing your work and you're no longer working, even if you've got no contracts ongoing, you'll still get the weekly benefit until you're back on your feet. And you're more than welcome to share existing premium. Yeah.
Ekaterina?
Sorry, I've got one more.
Go ahead.
So a question just popped up in my head in terms of the equipment cover.
Yes.
And I'm wondering if the equipment you use both for work and personal use,
It needs to be your business equipment, basically. So yes, you may. I understand when you have a laptop, perhaps for work, you may also use it for your personal use, but it needs to be your business equipment, your business laptop. Again, the easiest way of perhaps judging that is, as self-employed people, did you pay tax on that item, or did you claim it back? If it's something that's purely for your personal use that you didn't claim back on tax, then it's realistically not going to be insured. That's for your own personal use. If it has a business purpose and is a piece of your business equipment, then we'll cover it.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't mind you using your laptop for Facebook as well as your work. It's not going to be an issue.
And then if, say, something happens to that computer, does it matter that something happens to it kind of in a work scenario or personal time type situation, or whatever breaks the laptop?
No, so as long as it's your business equipment, it's covered. So if you drop your laptop while going something personal versus going to a business meeting, as long as that laptop is your business laptop, it's covered.
All right, thank you.
No problem at all. I think there might be a couple others. Yeah, so Louise, with that, if there's somewhere already, basically the 20% is because we work with Juno Juno for a little while, is automatically applied if you say you work with them. So if you've not yet put anywhere that you work with Juno Juno, 100% say I'm working with Juno Juno and you should get the discount. But there's a chance that they've already put your partner as Juno Juno on the quote, which means it might have already applied. But it's worth a try, 100%. And a question around cyber. So yes, there absolutely can be cyber cover. So especially for people in the IT world, we will offer cyber liability cover for you as well. Cyber liability is one of the more complicated insurances. Insurances have been going about for a long time, as we all know, but cyber's a modern thing. So every cyber policy is quite different, and what it covers you for is quite different. So I would have a bit of a think about what cyber risks you're concerned about, and discuss that with the broker you speak to. So definitely speak to a person when you're buying cyber cover in those situations to make sure that policy covers it. You are very much in a situation with cyber because it's only the last 10 years it really was a thing that we insure. Some policies have really up to date, some are. Thankfully ours is nice and up to date, but depending on who you're getting your insurance with, it may not be up to date with the modern tech issues that may occur, modern data breaches that could occur. Perfect. Feel free to try anything else at all. Alistair, yeah.
Yeah, we have one question from someone with the name Your Supreme Business Solution. Sorry, I don't know your first name, but I think it's your turn.
Thank you. Greetings of peace. My name is, you call me Sister Latif. I've been having technical difficulties, so I was just wondering if, so I never really got the presentations. So, will I be able to see the recording, or how's that going to work?
You will be able to see the recording. So we record every session. It is later published in the Freelancer Hub. I will share the link here in a second, so don't worry, you can revisit the slides, and all the questions that we've asked today should be there too. So if you had technical difficulties, don't worry.
Yeah, I will say with that as well, that email address that was mentioned earlier, that partnerships@kingsbridge.co.uk, that will go to a team of basically relationship managers within Kingsbridge. So they're pretty clued up when it comes to some of this stuff. And if they're not, they can always still ask me. So if you've got any questions after watching it, pop them to that email, and I'm sure somebody will forward it over to me and I can get back to you.
Okay, great. And the other question is, I'm in America, so I don't know. I'm not even clear on what the product really is, but
Yeah.
does that matter?
So being in America is not a problem, but because we are in a UK-based insurer, you have to have local insurance if it's a US company. If it's a UK limited company, being in America is not a problem necessarily. So it depends how your business is set up, basically. If you've got a UK limited company, but you spend a lot of time in America, we can definitely have a conversation with you. But if it's a US domiciled company itself, no insurer in the UK can insure you unless they've got connections with US insurers. It's all to do with legal and tax reasons.
Understood. Okay. Thank you.
No problem
Blessings.
at all.
So this is actually a very good point. So would you say, Max, that depending on the location, so if someone is in France or Germany and is set up as a business in France, Germany, or in any other country, should they consider getting the insurance in the country where their business is set up?
Not necessarily. So it depends on, it's all about the legal entity. So if you're a UK legal entity, you set it up in that country. But where you work then will depend on what the underwriter's criteria is. So I've mentioned someone's just put in there they work a lot in the US. So every insurer is different. Most insurers will say just UK or just Europe, if I'm being honest with you. Kingsbridge, it's a worldwide cover. It's standard doesn't include US unless you let us know. We'll simply ask you a couple of extra questions to make sure we're happy with it. The US has a very strange culture around suing people. They will sue you for anything over there. So it's a little bit more careful about what you've signed and agreed to before we agree to insure it. But yeah, so if you work a lot with US clients, simply just let us know. We'll ask you for a little bit more detail. Either myself or an underwriter in the business who's a little bit more senior will have a scan over it just to make sure that we're happy that you've not agreed to things that really you shouldn't be agreed to. And as long as that's the case, we'll be able to insure you. Lovely. Hopefully that answers that question. But if you're outside of North America, it's covered as standard. It's only North America that can be a little bit funny when it comes to suing people, basically. Lovely. Another question. Go ahead.
Hi. Oh, is it my turn? Sorry.
It is your turn. Go.
Okay, thank you. Hi, I'm Michaela. So my freelance business is graphic design and strategy, and I have variety of clients, and most of them, well, all of them, I signed contract as an LTD, so that's make it simple. But each of them is slightly different. So, for example, I have American client, but I sign with American team, but they pay me in pound, and the work that I do for them is UK and Europe based. So that is one client.
Yeah.
Another client is kind of like international client. They have office set in the Emirates, but then their budget is their bank is set up in the US, so they pay me in dollar. But that client have a lot to do with cryptocurrency, and that then a separate client. And then one client is in the UK, also work in crypto and NFT, but then they my contract is in pound. So you can see that, okay, it gets
complicated.
I'm not quite sure.
Yeah.
I mainly work from home, so hopefully I don't harm any of the public with my brilliant design.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll just like wonder what kind of like what type of insurance I should be getting, because as more traditionally I only work on like graphic design work, and then more of this new weird client coming on
All over
board.
the
I
place.
have
Yeah,
no
you've
idea what's going on.
That's okay. So similar to a question answered earlier, your risk is 100% professional indemnity again. PI is the thing that's going to matter to you most, because that's going to be a situation where perhaps some of your graphic designs are incorrect, or perhaps someone sees it as inappropriate or not to spec or anything like that, and they say this is not suitable. It could be a matter of you've now delayed our project. We now owe us money. That's where you're going to be covered for those situations. But when it comes to the fact that your clients are absolutely everywhere, every insurer is different again. So I'd advise you speak to the individual insurers. But when it comes to Kingsbridge, we try and make it as easy as we can for you. We only care about the contract law that your contracts are in and where you physically are. So if you're signing contracts that are in US law or Canadian law, then we will ask you a few more questions, like I mentioned there. But even if your clients are all in the US or US banks being paid, but your contracts are still written into UK law, doesn't matter that they're US companies. And then when it comes to you physically being somewhere, if you're physically in the US, we need to know about that as well, because you could hurt somebody while you're in the US, and then that'll be under US law. So the thing I'd always recommend, again, it's difficult to do this if you're a freelancer often, because you won't always have like an accountant behind you or a solicitor working with you. I'd always recommend trying to get your contracts that are with companies abroad still with them, but the contract's written into UK law. It just makes insurance easier, and it makes, if anything goes wrong, easier, because it's controlled by UK courts, not a court that we don't understand. It just makes it much easier. But if you can't get that, it's fine. You just need to let us know, or let the insurer know, and then they can review it. Again, Kingsbridge are one of the few companies that can do that. A lot of companies don't like it when you're working with US foreign clients. They find it more difficult to judge the risk. But feel free to send an email asking, and somebody will give you a call and discuss it with you in particular. Because I know it's complicated. If you've got loads of clients, you might have one written into UK law, one into US law. You're not a solicitor. You're not going to read through all the contract details and figure out what country is litigated here, that's when the other. So just use us. Use the insurer to judge that for you and tell you what you should have in those situations. Because it's not a graphic designer's job to look through contract law.
Thank you. I try to read, and I just like give up. Give me a headache.
Exactly. No, honestly, it does the same for me, but it's my job. So feel free to give it to us, and we'll review it for you.
All right. Thank you.
No problem at all.
Just to remind everyone, Juno members have 20% discounts with Kingsbridge. So I guess if there are no more questions, Max, thank you very much. I think we all learned a little bit today.
Thank you everybody for listening. As I said at the start to you there, that it's not always the most exciting topic, insurance, but that's also why you can't find much information about it online, especially for freelancers like yourselves. So feel free just to give Kingsbridge a call or an email, even if you're just seeking advice around what you need and what you need to do. Our salespeople, just so you know, are non-advised, basically meaning we can't tell you need to have this. We will only tell you, based on what you do, this is what realistically you should be covered for. So we're not in a situation where we're either going to be persuading you to buy insurance or overly salesy, because we legally can't be. So just ask questions. Give us a call, ask questions at any time. It's never going to be an issue.